fitness and wellness expert, naturopath, and adventure enthusiast Wendy Pett.
And my husband, Todd Isberner. He's a fundraising guru, men's mentor, and Bible scholar.
And as a couple, we're going to share riveting breakthrough stories from our guests who've experienced the meaning of a changed life.
Our hope is that you will be inspired, equipped, and entertained along your own life journey.
So lean in, listen well. This could be your biggest breakthrough.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Your Biggest Breakthrough. I'm Wendy Pett.
Yeah, I'm Todd Isberner. And hey, Wendy, Miss Positivity, as you are well known for.
Am I?
Yeah, you really are.
Oh,
You're always
okay.
upbeat, optimistic, positive, full of faith. But I got to ask you, do you ever feel like you want to give up?
Oh, gosh, no.
What? Wait a minute. I live with you and you are Miss Positivity, but on occasion
Okay,
there
I
must
am
be.
just
Okay.
kidding.
All
Yeah,
right.
there are times when I do want to give up. Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. And
Yeah.
I don't know exactly why that is. Why do
Well-
we get to the point? I mean, we know the Lord and we've got great things in our lives. Why do we get to this point of wanting to give up?
Yeah, I just think we lose perspective, and it makes us want to quickly lose hope just because we just lose perspective.
Yeah, no, you think about that and it's true. You start to have a limited perspective and it takes you down a place of being very negative and eventually you start to lose hope. And I guess the real question is, how do you not lose hope when things are really, really tough?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure it has to do with, it has to do with being convinced that we are loved and
Yeah.
that we are cared for by the one who made us and that we do have a purpose on our lives, right?
Absolutely. That is 100% true. And I really believe that's key
Yeah.
in shaping a perspective that gives us hope again. And that's exactly what you're going to hear about today, because our guest on this episode of Your Biggest Breakthrough is Rob Dempsey. And he's just a great guy. He's a friend of mine, known him for years. And he's going to walk us through some absolutely amazing stories of incredible breakthroughs in
Yes.
all kinds of different areas of his life. But you will be amazed and you will be encouraged and you will be well equipped. I want to tell you just a little bit about Rob. He is a diehard radio guy, been in it for a long time, been at the same station for 25 years. And some of you may even know Rob from the mornings on his radio network in Greenville, South Carolina. His morning show is also live streamed, both video and audio. He's one of the few that actually is willing to go on camera while he's doing his show. And some know Rob as the guy who lost 140 pounds
Woohoo.
to overcome obesity. Others know him as the 16-year-old kid that was literally kicked out of his home to live in the streets as a homeless guy. And others know him as being a foster and adoptive parent. So Rob and his wife's kids range from a 34-year-old war hero, 25-year-old social media marketing specialist, a 19-year-old honors college student, and a 12-year-old whom they adopted November 2009. So plus many other foster children that have come through their home in the last 9 years. And I think
Amazing.
that in itself is an amazing story.
Yes. Yes.
So welcome. Come on in, Rob. Welcome to Your Biggest Breakthrough. So glad you could take time today. And I'm guessing he just jumped out of his morning show to join us today.
Yes. We are so excited. Hey, Rob.
Hey, so
Thank
good to be here.
So glad to
you.
have you. Oh my
Are
goodness.
you a little intimidated because he's a radio guy? He's got that radio voice
both
thing
of
going
you
on?
do. So I'm a little
Huh?
intimidated by both of you with these radio voices.
I can put on my real voice.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
come on now. Yeehaw.
He is from the South.
I
Hey,
am in the
hey,
South. That's right. The deep
I
South.
have an appreciation for it.
You know, she's a Texan. So
Come
she
on,
knows
y'all.
that. She knows that.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Rob, we're so glad you're here. And, looking at your very successful life today with all the amazing accomplishments, it's really kind of hard to believe that you were ever in a place of feeling hopeless and unloved. I mean, it really is. And so, but your story, it shares just really tough and almost hopeless existence. It's a really tough story. When I've watched it, I just was in tears. Amazing. But we're just going to dive right into this. Can you take us to like where it all started? Take us to where it began in your life.
Oh gosh, streets of St. Petersburg, Florida. That's where I was born and raised. That's in Tampa Bay. So if you know Tampa, it's the other side of the bay where St. Petersburg and Clearwater and the beaches and the beautiful Gulf Coast is. And so that was home for me for over 30 some odd years. That's where I lived.
Wow.
That's where I was raised, kind of raised myself. My mom married a guy who she just kind of fell in love with. He was really messed up. And because of that, when I was 6 months old, I was already being abused. And so and of course, I have no memory of that. She left him pretty quick. He was out of my life, and I never knew who he was except for his name because I'm a junior. And so I've always known of this guy. I known his name. I never know him. I never knew his family. I never knew that side of the grandparents. Lived with my grandmother and my mom for quite a few years because she moved directly right in with him. I mean, with my grandmother. Didn't have a grandfather growing up either. So there was no male figure in my life. There was no father figure whatsoever. So
Rob,
I was kind of messed up at the beginning.
So when you were an infant, did your dad left?
My dad left.
Your birth dad left.
My
And
birth
so
dad left.
Did you ever, throughout all these years, have a chance to reconnect? Or
When I was 33 years old.
wow,
Really? Okay.
Wow.
we
It's a
haven't had
crazy
yet.
story.
okay,
It's a crazy story.
We have to talk that story, but all right, keep going. So you had a stepdad, but you were
For a
living
short
with
time.
grandma.
Mhm.
Yeah, living with grandmother. My stepdad didn't come into the picture. I remember the day when he came into our lives. We're at Treasure Island Beach. That's in St. Petersburg. And this guy comes up and looks at me and goes, so, hey, your sister looks kind of fine. I'm like,
Oh,
that's my
boy.
mom, and
Oh,
I'm like
boy.
5 years old.
Oh,
So
man.
she kind of liked that because she
Yeah.
paid attention to him. They got
Mm.
married pretty quick. So I had a stepdad in my life.
Mm.
The guy came back from Vietnam. He was on special forces. He was messed up in his head. I didn't know
Oh.
that at the time.
Mm.
So there was a lot of abuse that came out of that. He took out a lot of his wrath on me when my mother was gone working a night job.
Mm.
And so you can't go through life. Years later, she divorced him. So he was out of my life, but there were broken bones. There was, a scar in my head that you can't see anymore because wrinkles of age now cover it up. Hello, Shunny.
And
There's one
scars
advantage. Yeah.
you can't see.
Yeah,
Physically,
deep
right?
down
Deep
on the
down.
inside that I really had to deal with later on in life. And I'm so glad I did. I had to open up and just get that out. And prayer counseling, which was, oh my word, that dive deep and get a lot of bitterness I didn't even know existed and
Mhm.
unforgiveness that was in my heart that I didn't even know existed. Talk about your biggest breakthrough. That was a huge breakthrough in my life when I went through that season in my life about 10 years ago.
Mm.
And so grateful that I did. But if I were to fast forward into my teen years, I was really messed up. I mean, by the time I was 14, 15 years old, I was already drinking. I always looked older than what I am. I had a best friend who was in a car accident. And that was a night that changed my life completely because that's when I really went off the edge, off the cliff, so to say, because that family meant everything to me. And here he was laid up in the hospital in ICU. And I pretty much walked away from school. I was living mostly in the streets rather than in home. And my mother couldn't put up with it anymore. I was just that bad, that self-destructive and destructive in the home. I had a little brother 6 years younger than me from the dad that abused me, the stepfather that abused me, Joe did. And my mother couldn't put up with it anymore. And so by the time I hit 16, she said, "You are out of the house."
Wow.
I won't forget the night because my grandmother was standing there. My mom wasn't there. My little brother wasn't there. And she said, "You're going to have to pack up, Robbie." That's what she called me, my grandmother. "I'm so sorry, but your mom doesn't want you here anymore." And so I went across town. I lived with a good friend, their family for a short while. I was still a self-destructive kid, so they tried to find me a place to live. I lived in the guy's garage and then out on the streets after that because I didn't know how to support myself.
Wow, Robbie, I gotta ask you. So when you go back to that time when Grandma told you what Mom said, what was your first reaction? Were you angry? Were you bitter? Were you sad? How did you respond to that? This is your mom kicking
It
you
was a
out.
variety of different feelings because I really didn't feel loved. She was always gone. And so there was relief, there was sadness, there was anger, there was disbelief. I didn't know what to feel
Yeah.
at that time. It almost felt like freedom in a sense, but yet it felt like abandonment all at the same time. All that rejection that just flooded in all at once.
You
It
were
was
already kind of
terrific.
raising yourself, so to speak,
Yeah.
because she
Yeah.
was gone working or just
Yeah, she
gone-
had to support two kids.
Right,
So she
right.
was gone a lot.
Mhm.
Really gone a lot. I was a misfit at school, so I didn't really have a lot of friends at school. I didn't have a lot of people that I could confide in, and there's still no father figure that's in my life, so there was no direction. There's no place to turn, no place to go. And when you hit the streets and you're on your own, I mean, talk about abandonment and rejection. I didn't feel loved whatsoever.
Well, especially that. I mean, at that age, out on the streets. I mean, you're living literally in the streets. You're homeless. And you're
Yeah,
16 years
exactly.
old.
Homeless. I'd couch hop from time to
Wow.
time. So every
Wow.
now and then I'd have a roof over my head. I'd be able to rate a refrigerator, and I rated it too much, and they had to get me out of there,
So
you
for
know,
how
because
long were you living on the streets?
16 to 18 years old.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a few years.
So you obviously were going through a whole range of emotions and questions and all kinds of things. What kept you going? What prevented you from, I don't know, getting even worse trouble or even ending your life? How did you keep going? Why?
It had to have been God who was carrying me through all of that and leading me to the right places. I found this one church and a youth group that I would visit from time to time. I remember the youth pastor very well. His name is Keith Kilgore. And so he tried his very best. I would be able to go and get Spam and other, canned food items out of their shelter, or not their shelter, but the food pantry
Mhm.
that they had at the time. I mean, it was something else being threaded through all of this.
Mm.
He introduced me to Christian music. And so when I found a Walkman in a dumpster, he gave me a cassette that was Petra. More Power
Oh, I
to You
remember
was on
Petra.
it. I mean,
Really?
it was so cool. For then, that was
Wow.
like progressive rock and roll,
Yeah.
Exactly.
that you had
Exactly.
no idea that was in a church. I thought it was organ music and banjos. That's what I
Oh,
thought that Christian music
Sure.
was. I didn't think it was Petra,
that's
you know?
hilarious. Oh,
Yeah.
and
And this
to find
Christian,
it in a dumpster. I mean,
the
of all
Walkman. Yeah.
right. The Walkman in a dumpster. And before we even go in this next session, because or season of your journey, I need to know, while you're spending 2 years on the streets, I need to know about, were you on drugs? Were you on alcohol? Did you have any community on the streets? Like, were you really alone? I need to feel that.
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
moment.
Oh, boy. So I was still in connection with Landon's family.
Okay.
So I could from time to time stay over there, but I couldn't stay there long. I had a group of friends. It was Tracy, it was Landon, it was Lee, it was Dan. There was a group of people that I hung out with a little bit, but we were all bad. That's where I would get my drinking from. That's where I would get the alcohol from. I wound up to the drugs from. I wound up down on the south side of St. Petersburg, where Landon was in the hospital. And I found this guy. This sounds like a movie, but his name was 8 Ball, and he dealt with drugs, and so he
That
gave
is
me
classic right there.
I
8
know,
Ball.
isn't it wild?
Pretty sure
8
there's a
Ball.
rap
Yeah.
song with that.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's probably made about 8 Ball. I don't know where he is today.
Uh-huh.
But he gave me a nickel bag, which was a bag, filled with marijuana. And it was like for free. And from there, you're hooked. And then you try everything you can to scrape some money together. I wound up working at a construction site for a guy. And so I would be paid daily. When you do day labor, you can get paid daily. So I did everything from hanging soffit and fascia and gutters, and nailed a few tile or the roof. I forgot what the name of the roof thing is. I've been up
Shingles.
really early. Shingles.
Yeah.
So put the shingles up on the roof and that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of the day labor that I did, that I get some money, and then you just waste it real quickly, on the stuff that you shouldn't put into your body.
Wow.
So during that time, had you ever contemplated ending your life?
Yeah. So in St. Petersburg or Tampa Bay, Florida, there's this huge bridge. And if you're from the area, you know it. If you visit it, you know it. It's called the Skyway Bridge. The thing is 8 miles long, and it's tall enough so that barges can fit underneath it, because it's the port of Tampa. And so I would look at that bridge time and time again from some places that I would stay along the bay there, because I had no other place to go. And I would fantasize of jumping off that bridge, because that was a popular place to go if you wanted to end your life.
Wow. Makes me
What
sad.
stopped you from doing it?
Christian radio. Literally.
How that happened? Tell us a
Christian
story.
radio.
Amazing.
Wow.
A man by the name of Dave Stewart in the middle of the night would tell me that God loves me, that he had a purpose for me, that if I was the only one ever to walk on the face of this planet, he still would have sent Jesus to die on the cross for me. That spoke volumes to me as a teenager.
Yeah. Speaks volumes to me right now. I mean, maybe
That's-
someone listening, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the message everybody absolutely has to hear, that if you were the only one, God loved you enough that he would have given his life for you. So at the right time, in the right season of your life, there you are, and you were able to absorb the essence and the truth of that message. What happened after that?
Well, my situation didn't change, but my heart did. And I felt different. I knew that it was real. Once he prayed what he called the sinner's prayer. you know, and I asked Jesus into my heart. I asked forgiveness of my sins. I turned away from my sins. I just knew I was wrong, that I was repentful, that I needed Jesus. I needed his love in my life. And I felt it immediately. I felt it. I didn't change too much right away. I was still smoking. I was still drinking the drugs. I gave up immediately. I'm like, I don't need this in my life. And it was shortly after that that the drinking was done. I found my way back to that church. And then I found a ragtag people that were meeting in their homes. And they were hurt from church. I didn't know what that meant. They just kind of loved me. So I was able to be with that Bible study group for a short season. A couple of those guys worked for the country station that was in town.
Oh, wow.
And I told them that, you know, I want to do what that guy did on the radio.
Just like
That's
that.
cool.
Can you show me how to do that? And so they brought me into their home studio.
Yeah.
And Mark recorded what he called an air check. He said, this thing's called an air check. It's a demo tape. And so I sent it to a couple of places. One was WCIE, the station that I was listening to at the time, back in the mid 80s. And then I sent it to their sister station, and it turned out to be their sister station, the Joy FM, that gave me a shot and let a kid that just got off the streets to be a part of their team in the middle of the night.
So you had absolutely no experience. But you had passion, drive, and enough desire that they thought, well, let's go ahead and take a risk and hire this guy.
And God knew. And with
crazy.
that voice, I mean, he gave you that voice for a reason. I mean,
That's
come
right.
on, it's a radio voice.
Thank you.
I'm curious though, because you've been doing all this manual labor and whatnot, why you decided radio would be something of interest to you? Is it because of what you were hearing?
Because of how it changed my life. I saw that it was changing lives, and I wanted to be a part of something like that.
Yeah. That's so good. All right. So you landed at the Christian radio station, and tell us a little bit more about that second part of your journey. You're a brand new Christian. You're living for the Lord. You've got a ministry now on a radio station. Everything is all new for you. And how did things begin to unfold in the following years?
As far as how I was able to grow in the field, I threw myself at it. So I remember, I mean, it went from, I don't want to get too technical on people, but you might know analog or digital. I mean, it was all tape at the time that I started, and I watched it go into the computer age, so to say. So I threw myself into everything. I wanted to know how to do everything at the Joy FM. When I was there for the season. I was there from 88 to 2000 before I moved to where I am. I've been here for over 20 years now. And so I wanted to learn everything about it. I want to know how to do spots on the air, do production. I already had an air shift, so that was really cool. They got this big mobile unit, which was a van, a custom van that was converted to be a radio station on wheels, this big antenna. I said, I'm going to learn it, and I'm going to run that thing for you. And so they let me go out, do all the remotes where people were, went to the concerts. I volunteered at every single concert that was there. And every now and then they let me go. And now Mylon Lefevre, which that's an old Christian artist. Isn't it? I just really dated myself. People go, I know Casting Crowns. Right. Who's this Mylon guy?
So there you were learning all the different aspects of radio and feeling, I'm sure, pretty good about not only your job and what you could do, but about yourself, because you had higher self-worth and you knew that you were loved by God and your life was experiencing certain hallmarks of success. So tell us a bit about your personal life and what was going on there. You got married, kids, and all of that. I mean, were you feeling as successful as your life was saying you were?
No, I've always had a hard time with self-worth and feeling significant. Because of the abandonment, I think that I went through, and when I went through the prayer counseling, that brought a lot of that out. And so I always worked hard. I always work hard. I don't think I'm good. I think I'm a hard worker. And because I'm a hard worker, that translates to what I do, because if I don't work hard, it falls flat. But when I give it my all to really give God everything that I have, because I want to be available to him. I mean, I don't have a ton of skills, but I notice that he uses me when I make myself available to him. And he doesn't use me when I'm unavailable, if that makes sense.
No, that's a great word. And Rob, honestly, the fact that you showed up in such a way that you were hungry to learn, you were eager.
Yeah.
And I think that even speaks to somebody listening right now that just might be coasting. And it's like, no, let's step up, be eager and learn all you can in order to reach your goals. And it may not be that you're the best, but you're eager and your hard work shows and it pays off. So I love
Well,
that.
thank you.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated too by the other part of your story of I use the term release instead of losing, because it's about releasing emotions. You talk about the prayer and all
Yeah.
that, releasing the emotions that are attached to the weight. But let's talk about that 140-pound Rob Dempsey.
Yeah, your shadow.
I mean,
who used to be.
140-pound more
Right.
Rob Dempsey, should I say?
Yeah.
There's two of me in a
Yeah, there
sense.
was two of you. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that
Yeah.
and how did that start to snowball and get out of control? And
Mhm.
then when you went through the journey of releasing that weight.
Well, let me say how I think I got there.
Okay.
I'd never wanted to be hungry again.
Mm.
Never. So I never turned down an opportunity to eat. I didn't know how to eat well. It was
Yeah.
always junk. So I'd get up, first thing in the morning, not eat a thing, not eat a lunch. And when I got home, I ate all the wrong things, not the right things, but the wrong things. Now people call it intermittent fasting when you skip a couple of meals,
That's
and they
right.
call that healthy,
Yeah.
but I didn't put the vegetables or the protein or the fruits or
Right.
anything that was
It was
good
the
for me
cheeseburger
in
and
me.
fries. Yeah.
Cheeseburgers, fries, the Doritos, the sour cream and onions, the Oreo ice cream, all that stuff was my diet. And I thought, it's okay. I'm eating and I'm living, but I was expanding to a waistline that was almost, 50 inches around.
Mm.
It was something else. So here was the breakthrough moment for me when it comes to the health journey. And it was when I
Yes.
was on a roller coaster ride with my daughter.
Mm.
Amanda's 9 years old at the time. And we waited in a line that was about 2.5 hours long. That's how bad I wanted to go on this roller coaster. Listen, I'm from Florida. That's the land of theme parks. I love roller coasters. I don't want to miss a ride. But when I got up finally on the ride, I was almost 50 inches around. I was in a tight 48 size pants. I mean, and I was Dunloped over and I could barely zip the thing, but I was in denial. And I was not going to go to a size 50. And so they couldn't buckle me in at all. And after what seemed like I was the Shamu attraction at the park at this moment, because it was silent and people were witnessing, they were trying to strap me in. They really worked hard to strap me in. My daughter grabs my hand and says, "Daddy, we don't need to go on this ride. It's okay."
Oh, wow.
Let me tell you, that just sunk me so low because I love my kids. My kids are my life that God has allowed me to have and the opportunity to raise and share Jesus with. And sometimes I'm on a mountaintop doing that. And sometimes I drop and fail, pretty lit. That's the parenting, right?
Yes.
And so, but that was like, good night. What am I doing here? I can't even go on a ride with my daughter, let alone I'm embarrassed at the pool because of the skin that I'm in and all this other stuff.
Wow.
And so I found out that the town that I lived in was going through this big initiative called the Greater Greenville Shrink Down. And 2 hospital systems joined forces along with the YMCA. And I went to the press conference for that to learn about it. And I walked up at the end of that press conference to the president of the YMCA chapter in town and said, "I'm going to be your poster boy." And so he said, "Listen, the Y's doing an initiative called Wellness Works. Why don't you learn a little bit more about that?" And so I went to it. I learned more about it. And I thought, I want to share this journey, but I don't want to be the guy who is like glorifying the fact that I'm losing weight and you're not. So I wanted to bring other people on the journey with me. So we made, and this is 2005, we called it Rob's Big Losers. Just to let you know, that's January 2005. September 2005, NBC comes up with a great idea called The Biggest Loser.
So you started that, Rob, man.
Wow.
I don't know if I started
Where
it,
are
but
the
it was a kind of
royalties
a
on that
parallel.
I don't care. We're giving you the credit. I know the guy that started Biggest Loser.
Exactly. It was Rob.
I called it big. They called it biggest.
Yeah, whatever.
So whatever. So I went on this journey. We had 4 people at 4 different Ys, and we went through a 12-week journey, and it stuck for me. And I'm like, I can do this because it wasn't rocket science. All I learned was that I needed a certain amount of servings of fruits and vegetables, of learning to eat the right things, the right amount of proteins, all that stuff. And I started to get a love for endurance sports. And so I ran a 5K really dirt slow, but I finished the thing. And then I did a 10K, and then I did a half marathon, and then I did 9 marathons after that.
Wow.
I got bored
Amazing.
of that, and I
Oh.
did 10 triathlons after that.
We're talking triathlons where you swim, you bike, and
And you run.
You
and
run.
you run.
Yes.
The whole deal, like the
The whole
Ironman
deal.
triathlons. Wow.
Exactly.
Woo.
Exactly. So I started doing those, and I fell in love with endurance sports. So for me, I had to find, number one, I had to learn how to eat. So I eat God-made food, not
Yes.
man-made food.
Amen to that.
There's a difference between the processed stuff and the stuff that God put on this earth in the first place.
Oh yeah.
And I learned that I needed to find something that I love to keep me active. And so for me, the goal was learning how to find something I like to be active. It was endurance sports at the time. I got into CrossFit and I did the games and all that other stuff. So I did
Oh,
a
my
variety of
goodness.
stuff. I just keep myself always going. I did cycling for quite some time. I really like the sport of cycling. And so I got involved in that. One year, this is really cool. And then I'll stop, sounding like I'm gloating. But one year, I got with a group of people. There was 25 of us. And our goal was to cycle from Greenville, South Carolina to Austin, Texas. But we wanted to do it for a reason. And that's because most of the people on that journey had somebody in their life that passed away or is battling cancer. They're a warrior fighting for their life. So we raised $250,000 for cancer research.
Wow.
Most of it
Amazing.
stayed in our city. A portion of it went to, at that time, Live Strong, that Lance Armstrong was championing back in 2000. This was
Right.
2008 that we did that. The last 90 miles was with Lance Armstrong
That's
of our
Cool.
1,300-mile
amazing.
journey.
Oh man, that's
Oh.
so cool.
Rob,
Yeah.
that is so cool.
Yeah. So
You-
when you started that whole journey, you were about 38,
Yes,
35,
38
right in
years
there?
old.
It's amazing because
Gosh,
Wendy, you work with a lot of clients,
I
but
know.
people feel like they've got to be a lot younger than
They
that.
feel like they're too old,
if they're
too,
gonna-
too
if-
far gone.
Yeah, if they're going to take on a big health challenge.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that God used that very painful incident in your life with your daughter
Yeah.
to be the motivation for you to get going. That's again, just a real trigger point for you that obviously paid off.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
today we have opportunities to work out together.
Oh, I love
Nice.
It's
that.
beautiful.
Rob.
It's so
I
beautiful.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And you know what I love too, Rob, is I'm kind of hearing a theme throughout this interview so far is what you put your mind to, Rob,
Mm.
you do it.
Yeah.
And
You do.
no, you as in Rob.
Oh,
Like, yeah,
not in
you
general,
have,
but
yeah, you have, but it's true too. But yeah, when you put your mind to something and you're really all in, you can accomplish great things. But you are wired that way. I'm seeing that throughout this little story,
Yeah,
throughout
yeah.
this interview, that you're wired in such a way that you are willing and eager to learn everything and to step up to the plate to accomplish what you deserve and desire in life.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
love that. You're really an inspiration. So thank you.
yeah, nothing but God. I've got to get the strength from him to do it.
Yes.
And when I
yes.
apply myself, I get the strength. So it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to those who just not quite sure that they're backing off saying, well, okay, all these great things happened to Rob because he was wired that way and it was easy for him eventually to tap into that. But I'm not wired that way. I don't have that kind of drive, that motivation, but I'm way overweight or I'm not as close to God as I'd like to be, or my family life is not where I want to be.
What's the first step?
How can you advise them? What's the first step they need to take?
To take a step.
There you go.
That's what I had to do. I had to take the first step and then the second step. And when I was 5 steps in, it got a little bit easier. Every day it does get a little easier,
Love that. Yes.
but it's not always easy.
No.
You just got to do it. Like, one thing about me, I can lay in bed all day long if I wanted to. So I've put in my mind never to hit snooze.
Mm.
So when the alarm clock goes off, my feet are on the ground and my day starts. I never hit snooze. It's just another step that I have to take every single day. So don't hit snooze. Just take the first step.
I love
Just have the courage enough, and God will give you the courage if you ask him.
Mm.
I mean, when we lack wisdom, he'll give it, right?
Mm.
When you need courage, he'll give it if you rely if you rely on him to give it to you. He will. He does it for me. And I'm just, some dweeb of a radio guy. He'll do it for anybody, and he'll do it for you.
But
yeah.
you also, you went through this time 10 years ago of releasing some emotions, releasing some deep rooted stuff. And I know that that's a lot that I work with my clients as well. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I know that is such freedom for you.
It's a part of my journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Share a
went
little
through,
bit about that.
yeah, I went through some prayer counseling, and the prayer counseling basically, and it's specifically that prayer counseling. And what we did was we dug really deep and went into my past. It's easy to make the Lord of the present and the Lord of your future, but to make him the Lord of the past is really tough, because there's some stuff there. And there was stuff that was so deeply rooted in my heart and hidden so far down, I didn't even realize it was there. I mean, there's the obvious thing that I got to forgive my dad who left,
Yeah.
and I didn't meet until I was 32 years old. I had to forgive my mom because she kicked me out of the house. But there was stuff from there, from an aunt who had a dirty magazine that I found that I brought home and got in trouble with my mom with, from kids at school that would bully me that I just buried so deep that I never forgave. And once all these things, and it was like hundreds of things that came out,
And maybe
and
even forgiving yourself.
yeah, that was a big thing, because I blamed myself.
Mhm.
And sometimes I still do, when it comes to my mom, because I hurt her bad. And so I never blamed her for kicking me out of the house. I blamed me for hurting her to bring her to the point of kicking me out of the house and getting me away from my brother. And so I had to deal with a lot of that. And once real forgiveness came into play on all those different seasons and events in my life for people that I had even forgotten about, but stored away deep down inside in the memory bank and in my heart, once that forgiveness started to come out, there was more freedom.
Yes.
It's amazing.
I think it speaks volumes to people who have lost hope, and who do believe that God can be Lord of my present, even though I'm struggling with that. But the idea of being, Lord of my past, that is a foreign concept to a lot of people. But I love the way you have brought us there, because whether it's through prayer counseling or seeking the Lord on your own or through an accountability group or something, you're saying don't be afraid to go back, because if you go back and let God reveal things, you're going to find a place of freedom that you haven't yet experienced.
You're
And
right.
I think that we oftentimes say, well, just forget the past and move forward. But there are times you got to remember the past or you can't get free.
And you don't want
You're
to stay
right.
stuck in the past.
Well, you
right?
talked about, forgiving yourself, your mom, your dad. Tell us a little bit about that reunion story with your birth dad.
I'm on the air, and I've always shared my story. And I'm on the afternoons down in Florida at the Joy FM. And so I'm sharing my story about, growing up without a dad and, those kind of things. And this guy calls me out of the blue and says, listen, I've got your dad's phone number. Do you want it?
Wow.
I didn't believe him at first.
Right.
No.
Yeah. I'm like, let me call you back.
Yeah.
And I called him after I got off the air. And so first, I grilled him really hard. Who is this guy? Who are you? How do you know my dad? It happened that he knew and worked with one of his former wives. And had his number through that. So he gave me the guy's number, my dad's number. I called him, asked him a few direct questions that only he would know how to answer, and he answered them right. And so we're going to meet up with each other, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. And of course, I'm sharing this on the air. This police officer calls me and says, "I listen to you every day, Rob, and I love how open you are. I have to ask you, do you know anything about your dad? Anything at all?" I said, "Well, I have his name. I'm a junior, and he left when I was 6 months old. So I gave him I'll just give you the year, 1967. So he left when I was, 6 months old. That was 1967. That's all I know about the guy." He goes, "Tell you what, I'm going to pull his record and I'll get back to you."
Wow.
So he calls me. And mind you, this is the 90s. So we don't have the phones. We don't have what we have today. And so that's when printers had this paper with holes on the side of it. And the dot matrix is going, all across the thing. He calls me 42 pages later. Said, "Listen, it's 42 pages. This thing is still going. This is what I know about him." And he shared a couple of things about him. And he said, "And I share this with you just so that you walk into this knowing with your eyes open and allow God to give you some protection here. And when you meet this guy." And so he gave me some advice. He said, because of the type of person that he is and the record that he has, which he had 19 aliases at the time. So he had 19 different names. He said, meet at a common location. He goes, go to a restaurant. And he's saying, bring cash, because more than likely you're going to pay for it your go-to will be a credit card to pay for it. Don't pay it for the credit card, because what he'll do is that he'll walk back in later to get your credit card number. It's different than it was today back then, because back then you hand your credit card over and they would swipe your credit card in a machine that would imprint your whole information on that,
right.
down that, and so they had carbon copies and all that other stuff. So all of your information was on the receipt, not the X's. And so sure enough, we meet him. I went with my wife. We met 40 miles away from my house. I never even told him the city that I lived in. He knew that I was on a Christian radio station because he started to do some research at the time. And so, very good looking man. He looks like me.
Of course.
Awesome.
Of course.
And yes, very good
spitting
looking.
image. He has this really deep voice. So he sounds like he could be on the radio.
Uh,
He had a young lady that was with him as well. A very charming, and a con artist. You could hear it in him, because this is what basically a lot of his record was. And so, sure enough, at the end of the evening, let me back up once. So he tries his best to connect with me. He goes, I used to have a prison ministry.
Wow.
And I went,
whoa.
really?
Mm.
And I looked at him, I said, was that before, after, or during your incarceration?
Oh.
And he goes, oh, you heard about that? I said, I only know a few things. I didn't tell him about the police officer doing what he did. I just kept that very mysterious and didn't volunteer the information. He goes, yeah, I wrote a few bad checks and I paid my debt to society for it. Well, he did a lot more than that, and I knew it. So at the end of the night, sure enough, the bill comes, and the first time that he can pay his son's meal, his very first time, he goes, oh, I can't pay for this. And I'm thinking, the police officer called it. He knew exactly what was going on. God protected me.
Yes.
And so I was in a season in my life where I could handle what happened. If it was a year earlier, 5 years earlier, I would have gave in to all that, especially the kind of person that I was. So God protected me from all of that. And sure enough, I had cash and I paid for it with cash,
Amazing.
And so after that, there was one more encounter with him, and then he's been out of my life ever since. Oh, and he paid for the second meal at Taco Bell.
Okay.
Oh, well, at least he paid for it.
Yes.
I love the fact, though, that God had groomed you over the years to walk in a place of freedom and forgiveness. Because some people would have come out of that meeting just thinking, you wretched, no good, blah, 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 and start to feel bitter and resentful. And because of your relationship with the Lord and the experience of his forgiveness in your life, you could offer that to your dad. And you didn't have to jump through any particular hoops or do any of that stuff to try to manipulate the situation. I think that is so encouraging for anybody who's struggling with a past or present relationship where the thing just seems so lopsidedly unfair. You're saying we do have the power and the ability, if we will commit to forgiving and loving.
Yeah. And it's real. And how God, for all those years, I had all these questions of why. Why? Why wasn't my dad in my life when I was kicked out? Why couldn't I have gone to his place? Where is he? Why is he absent? And that encounter showed me that God protected me for so many years, and I could not handle it until that night.
That is so powerful, Rob. And I think about those that may be listening that haven't met their father or mother, and they are wanting to have that reunion. And did you have any feelings of disappointment? I mean, did you see it flourishing in a different way? Obviously, how did you handle that disappointment?
I did. Here's the
Or were you
beautiful thing.
disappointed?
I got to a point in my life where I didn't have disappointment in that
cool.
encounter.
Yeah.
What I had was thankfulness
Yeah.
because of that
That's
encounter,
awesome.
because I saw what God saved me
And
from
protected.
all those
Yeah, right.
years. And I know why I had to go and live in the streets, because I couldn't go to him. I mean, I would have wound up a very different person
That's true.
if he was in my life at 16 years old. So I couldn't handle that until I was 32.
Yeah.
Those unanswered prayers that are
Yeah.
actually answered. Right?
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's crazy to come out of my mouth that I wasn't disappointed. I was more thankful and grateful to God.
Cool.
That's a great perspective.
Mhm.
That's the kind of perspective that is always going to bring about hope when you face situations that seem to be hopeless or you're up
Yeah.
against the wall. And I know you've had help in your life doing that. Certainly, just your family, your church, your friends. But as you look back over the years, has there been any one person who has been most influential in your life? And if so, how come?
There's several people that have been that have been very influential in my life.
Mhm.
One is our leader, Jim Campbell
Ah,
of the Radio Training Network. He's the one that owns the station, or is the president, I should say. We're a nonprofit. He's the president of the station that I'm at, the station that I first worked at in Florida, the Joy FM. So we're the same family. That guy invests in me every single day.
Mm.
An hour before our conversation, I had a conversation with him on Zoom,
ah,
just right here on
okay,
this very
excellent.
same camera.
Yes.
Had a conversation with him, and so he inputs so much in my life. You know,
The power of
I have a mentor at the station where I'm at, and that is Alan Henderson, and he helps me be the leader that I am today, because I can't do this thing right by myself. I need people to help me and hold my hand along in this journey. And so those two men, very influential in my life. And I'll even go back to that youth pastor that I haven't seen in decades, but Keith Kilgore, who tried his best to reach a homeless kid.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a First Baptist Church youth group where there's a good, nice fuddy-duddies in that youth group. And here I am, some hard knock kid, and he kind of stretched himself to do that. And I owe my life to those guys who did that for me, and still do.
You can see God's loving hand on your life, and hopefully we all can see that. We identify certain people or certain instances where God really intervened because of his love for us.
Mhm.
Before we let you go, Rob, I want to just ask you if you could come up with a word, just one word or a phrase that would maybe sum up the entirety of who you are.
What would that
A
be?
word or a phrase?
Come on.
Where did you get that
Will you
from?
write a book?
You can think.
Wow.
You can think.
A
Somebody
word or a
asked because
phrase.
somebody asked me that, and I had to stall for a while I'm thinking about what would sum up the entirety of.
I know,
who I
yeah.
am.
Hit that
And you
Jeopardy
cannot
theme
say,
song for a while.
you cannot say radio guy. Okay, I'm talking about who you are. The word or the phrase that maybe sum up the entirety of who is Rob Dempsey.
Faithful comes to mind.
Yeah.
Endurance comes to
Yes.
mind.
Yeah.
Not giving up comes to mind. Those are some things that I think of.
Yeah.
Influential people you were talking about. There's a guy named Bill Scott that's very influential in my life. That guy calls me all the time.
Mm.
I was thinking about people that I see every day, physically, and involved in where I'm at. But from afar, Bill Scott has been beautiful to me, and he reminds me of those words of who I am and what I can be: faithful and strong, and don't give up, and a lot of that stuff. He was one of those guys on that radio station back in the day that helped me on my journey to get to where I am today.
So cool.
That's so cool. We have loved hearing your story,
Yeah.
and I know the listeners are going to be blessed big time. And you are such an inspiration. I'm just kind of sitting here absorbing all this and in awe of how God has worked in your life in such a beautiful way. So thank you for sharing your story and being so faithful and being so filled with just passion and wanting to endure until the end. So
thank
you.
you.
Make a big difference.
Been such a joy to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Rob.
so much.
Man,
All right.
Bless you.
Bless
big
you
time.
so much.
Hope to see you
Thank
around.
you.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh boy, his story is pretty spectacular. It's almost like jaw dropping. Like really,
There's so many different components, and you want to go back and
wow.
go, wow, how did he make it through that? Wow. And you just have to come back to the fact that God had his hand on Rob's life, and he wasn't going to let go. And he brought enough circumstances around,
And people.
including finding the radio in a dumpster.
The little Walkman.
The little Walkman. So you could
I
tune
love
into
that.
Christian radio.
Yeah.
And I just, oh man.
I mean,
God,
God will
thank you.
reach you wherever you
Yeah.
are. And I
Yeah.
think of the Mr. Kilgore, I can't remember the first name, but that planted a seed in him. It didn't take, in that moment, but it took down the road. So don't dismiss the seed that you're planting in someone of truth today.
Well, and remember too, that if you are feeling, a bit hopeless about something or someone in your life, just remember this, get the right perspective. And the right perspective is God truly does love you.
Yes.
And if you'll lock that into place in your heart and your mind,
That's the
you
hope.
will have hope.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Your Biggest Breakthrough. We will catch you on the next one. Feel free to share this with friends, family that may be blessed by it as well. And give us a rating and a review and all that wonderful stuff. But we appreciate you, as always, spending your precious time with us. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next one.